there. Welcome to the Pelvis Project podcast. I'm Megan.
And I'm Roxy. We're two pelvic health experts brought together by passion for our careers, entrepreneurship, motherhood, and the desire for intentional relationships.
Join us in our mission to spread pelvic floor awareness and start conversations surrounding the truth behind genuine health, imperfect wellness, and joyfully navigating life. We are so glad you are here with us.
Let's start the conversation.
Hello, Roxy.
Hello, Megan.
We're back. Our next episode.
I'm excited. How are you?
Pretty good. Before we get to it, tell me something good.
Coming off of Easter, it was fun and just good weather and outside and good conversation. And I think it was just a good time to refocus on what's this life about.
That's right. It was a good weekend. The sun was out. It was gorgeous. And we had our first weekend of baseball games on Friday and Saturday before Easter. One of the days was so cold and windy, but it was really fun just to get back outside and enjoy all of that. So it's fun. All the moms and watching these boys. It's a good time. So, all right. Well, we're going to jump on in. We're doing a Q&A episode today. So we've got some questions that were given to us that we're going to address in this episode. So we're going to hop right in. And our first one is, I have been told leaking after having kids is normal, but it's been 3 years. Is this just my new normal or can it actually improve? So I would just say we get this question. Well, here's the thing. This gets talked about a lot in our space, but it surprises me how many people still think that leaking after kids is normal and it's just the way that it's going to be. Because also I noticed that unfortunately, either it doesn't get brought up to the provider, and so therefore the provider can't speak into it appropriately, or there's some old school thought processes where even some providers think that there's nothing that can be done. So therefore, we still have this question floating around thinking that that's just the way it is. So Roxy, tell us your thoughts on that one.
I just saw a study actually that is very applicable for this. I think it was, and I might misquote it, so gosh, don't quote me on this, but pretty sure it was women who are leaking 3 months postpartum. I want to say it was 83% are still leaking at 12 years postpartum. And it's it's a shocking number.
Yes.
And I had just been reminded of that study. And I think that speaks right into this of saying it's been 3 years, sister, 9 more. It's probably still going to be the same if you're following on trends with what the studies are showing is that leakage isn't going to go away. And so we can't just sit around and wait for it to go away. We actually have to intervene. We have to remind the body how to work. So I guess that's all to say it isn't normal. It's common, but it's not normal. And we've talked about that little soapbox that we both love to stand on.
Yeah.
But I also I think I'm surprised. One thing, I maybe just want to speak into where's the misunderstanding? And one thing I wonder is if the idea of incontinence is full bladder, because I'm shocked at a lot of times on intake forms when people won't mark that they have urinary incontinence, but then when I ask specific questions about how often are people leaking, how much are they leaking, then there's all this description of these leaks that are happening. And so I wonder if that maybe could be, I don't know. I'm just trying to think of how can we do a better job of educating moving forward, which isn't really answering this question. But I wonder if there is a misunderstanding of what incontinence is and leakage, and people will be like, well,
I don't lose my whole bladder.
Yeah, obviously when I cough and sneeze. And I'm like, girl, pee leaving you when you're not trying is leakage. I don't really know how else to tell you that.
Yes, I would agree with that. You see that a lot where someone marks our intake, there's initial question and it says they don't leak, but then later down the line they put laugh, cough, sneeze. And I'm like, wait, how's this? Well, I mean, I don't leak on a regular basis, but when I laugh, cough, sneeze, I do. And I'm like, okay, that's leaking. And we shouldn't still be doing that. So yeah, like, is this my new normal or can it actually improve? To answer the question is it can improve. It should improve. There's lots of factors that could be influencing it. And without a full assessment, we wouldn't be able to tell you why this is happening because there are so many factors. It would depend on how old are you? How long has this been going on for? Obviously, this one's 3 years, but like what kind of delivery did you have? How was your delivery? Was it traumatic? Like, there's all these different things. What's your stress like? Do you breathe? Do you hold your breath? Like, all these things that we want to look at.
Well, and at the end of the day, this person, if there's any dysfunction, I think a safe blanket statement is the pelvic floor isn't coordinating. It's either
Yeah.
not squeezing strong enough, it's not squeezing fast enough, it's not squeezing like it's just
It's not activating.
the
Yeah.
mechanics are not there, the coordination is not there, and those need to be restored, and they can usually be restored. Yeah, I mean, there's like Megan said, if she has a spinal cord injury, then that's a whole nother ball. Like there's just these like
Yes.
things that we can't
Yes.
blanket statement anything except for that the pelvic floor isn't functioning if you're leaking or isn't functioning correctly if you're leaking. And so
That's right.
we have to remind it and reteach it and retrain it how to do that,
Yep.
which is possible.
Just like rehab. Yep. Okay. So next one is I don't have kids, but I have pain with sex. And I feel like no one takes me seriously. Is pelvic floor therapy still for me? So here's the thing. Doesn't matter if you have kids or not, with or without children, you still, anybody and everybody could have pain with sex. So factor of having children. I mean, we've seen women have kids and have pain with sex, and we've seen women never have children and still have pain with sex. So that's that piece of it. And is pelvic floor therapy still for me? Absolutely. We want everybody to hear us when we say sex or intimacy should not be painful unless you're choosing for it to be painful for whatever reason. But like, you should not have pain. So, yes, 100% pelvic floor therapy is for you, regardless of where you're at in your lifespan. Anything to add to that?
I have lots of things to add, but that
I
was
know.
said
Well, I mean,
well.
could go down a
I'm
rabbit
trying
hole.
to, sorry, I'm trying to
Yeah,
think
it's
of
okay.
if there, I think that also just because there's a lot we don't know about this, right? We're just hearing
Yes.
this question.
Yeah.
So, but I think that sometimes just because it's the first interaction was painful, I guess there's a difference of, okay, maybe there was something that happened or they had an injury or something and then it became painful, right? But I also think that there's some people that don't realize how painful their intimacy actually is because it's always been that way. That was
Yeah.
hard for me to get out. But
Yeah.
that's what I was trying to get at is just saying, ooh, I want you to be curious. Like it shouldn't be painful and you should actually really enjoy it. And you should be able to relax and enjoy that. And so if there's any kind of guarding, if there's any kind of pain, if there's any kind of discomfort, I just would encourage anyone, even if it's always been that way, because I think we do hear of, well, I had babies and then it hurt. Or, like a lot of times after delivery, it hurts. So, not a lot of times, sometimes, but I have a lot of people that didn't realize how bad their pain actually was with it because it's just always been that way and they didn't know any different.
Right. And then I think too, the part of this question of like, I feel like no one's taking me seriously. If not, I would recommend maybe talking to a new provider because if it's getting brushed off or being like, oh, just like to have a drink glass of wine or whatever, that's never the answer. And so hopefully, I mean, if you know somebody or you're listening to this, Kansas is a direct access state. So you can just go find yourself a pelvic floor therapist. They're the appropriate route to go to have an assessment. Obviously, if you have had everything ruled out that there's nothing else going on, but most of the time, something like this, when you're noticing painful sex, a pelvic floor physical or occupational therapist can be able to assess everything very clearly and obviously refer back to doctor if needed. But yes, to our point, it just should never be painful and it should always be enjoyable. But I also want to echo Roxy's point of if we don't have anything to compare it to and it's what we're not having these conversations, we don't realize that it shouldn't be because it's if that's just the way it's always been, then we don't know that. I mean, I had one person say to me when I asked once, and they were like, "Well, yeah, I mean, a little, like the normal." And I was like, "Oh, no, no."
I wanna just put a little plug in here for the clitoris because I
Oh
just
yeah.
think this is the most underrated organ that we have, and
Yes.
it's for females, it's only for arousal, like, that's its
Yes.
one job. That
Pleasure.
was
It's
one
one
job.
job.
And so also, if you're listening to this and you think you're having decent sex, like you probably
Yeah.
are, I'm not going to try to take that away from you. But if you aren't accessing your clitoris
Yes.
intentionally and regularly, try it out. Try it on for
Yeah.
size. Let's just see how this goes. You could be missing out on awesomeness and not know it. And that would be
It'd be
incredible
very
for you.
sad.
Yeah.
And a lot of women aren't educated on the clitoris and they don't know their bodies and they don't know that this organ exists, nor do their husbands, because let's face it, education on both sides is just terrible as we're growing up. And so if they're not even taught, that that's the pleasure spot, then we've got a major Houston, we have
Of
a
a
problem.
problem.
And so, yeah, I love maybe we probably need to do a whole episode on the clitoris because that's probably we need to put that on a list.
I tell people, God made the clitoris.
Yes,
We don't have to be
for
embarrassed.
one
He
purpose.
created it. It's
Every-
appropriate to talk about.
Everybody say it with us.
The
Clitoris.
clitoris.
Oh,
All right.
man. Okay, let's move on. Number 3, what's the difference between doing Kegels on my own versus seeing a pelvic floor physical therapist? How do I know if I'm doing them wrong?
Can I say, what's the difference between an apple and an orange? Maybe an
Yes.
apple and peas.
Yeah, big difference.
Huge
And
difference.
let's just say maybe we just don't do them, uh, and we'll solve this whole question. No, but seriously. Okay, so first off, pelvic floor therapist does a lot more than just Kegels. So again, this is the same kind of old school mentality that pelvic floor therapists, you're just going to come and do Kegels. I don't even remember the last time that's something I prescribed somebody to do. And I would say, well, first off, pelvic floor therapy, if you're going to the right pelvic floor therapist, they are assessing your whole body. And there's lots of factors. We've got lots of episodes on this. And without going into it, so many layers that play into the factor of why your pelvic floor is not working correctly, which is why people typically then go do Kegels because they think Kegels are going to solve the problem of the leaking. Well, come to find out, there's actually a coordination problem or their muscles are have too much tension. They don't know how to let them out. And so actually it fuels the problem. It makes it worse. We see that all the time. You also can see this when you try to do like an online course and you try to like treat yourself. There's a lot of really good stuff in those. That's why I tell people is there's like great exercises in those. But sometimes you need that first assessment and a little bit of guidance on exactly what your pelvic floor is doing. So then you can actually do those exercises correctly. It's the same thing with like a TA contraction. People are doing these like at home core courses, which are great. They're great exercises. But if you don't know how to actually activate your core and pelvic floor together to start with, it's like you have no foundation to start from. So you can come in, do an initial assessment, initial cueing, 1 to 2 sessions, then go do whatever it is you're going to do. And I think I would say the same thing with like, if you're going back to work out into a gym, if you're going to a workout class, let's say you leak urine and you're like, well, I'm going to go to a strengthening class. I'm going to go do all this hardcore stuff. I'm like, why would you not first go get an assessment, 1 or 2 sessions to just make sure you're headed in the right direction and then go do those classes or whatever it is? That would be like way more productive in your outcome and your optimization of your health than just going for it. So I kind of went down a little tangent on that. Sorry.
No, that's good. Okay, there
Got you.
wasn't a symptom with this, was it? It was just Kegels versus pelvic floor therapy, right?
Yeah, no symptoms, just
Okay,
Kegels on my own versus pelvic
gotcha.
floor therapy. How do I know if I'm doing them wrong?
Sure. This is how I frame this because I sometimes also don't, I sometimes wonder if people just think that obviously we're going to push it because we're pelvic floor therapists. Does it make sense? Like, of
Yeah,
course you're going to say that.
right.
But how I think about a Kegel is if I was trying to train to do a pull up, I'm not going to sit there at my desk and just keep my arm completely still and squeeze
Yeah,
my bicep over and over and over and over and over and then expect my body to be able to do a whole pull up.
yeah, yeah.
And so we can't just sit or stand or whatever, but be still. Squeeze, 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 squeeze the pelvic floor and then expect it to hold our pee when we sneeze or when we jump and land and we do these functional movements. So that's my kind of my analogy of we wouldn't do it for anything else. Why are we
Why
doing
would we
it?
doing it for? Yep.
Yeah.
There we go. Mic drop.
Mic drop.
Okay. Next question. I'm getting told everything looks normal, quote, normal, by my doctor, but I still have pelvic pain, bloating, and weird bladder symptoms. Where do I even start? So, first off, there's just like a lot of a loaded question in here because we don't know like what the weird bladder symptoms are. There's lots of things that could play into bloating, but we do know this person does not feel well and they're just told like everything's normal. And I don't know if that means blood work,
Sure. It could be
seeing
imaging,
it could be it,
ultrasound,
yeah,
stuff
could be
like that.
anything.
Yeah.
So the question is, where do we even start?
I mean, we're going to say pelvic floor therapy.
I know we really are.
Really. But I also think it's a question of what's the most bothersome thing that you are experiencing and where do you want to go first? I mean, if it's not pelvic floor therapy, what if it's like a dietitian? That could be a really good place too for just bloating. Obviously, the pelvic pain, that's us. Like, we need to do that. But I think there's some other things like abdominal pain and bloating and things like that, that if the pelvic pain feels back burner, I don't know. I guess I would give someone the blessing to say, I mean, obviously my answer is pelvic floor
Yeah.
therapy. But yeah, I think that if someone's like, where do I even start? It's like, well, come to us. We'll help you with that. But
Yeah.
also, if someone's like, I really want to go check out this person and get blood work done or get my hormones tested, like kind of what's your gut tell you?
Yeah. You can go do that. And I would just say, like, if the question's more like, where do I even start? Like, how would we start in pelvic floor therapy?
Mm,
Then to that, I would say, obviously, we are going to, do an in depth intake and an assessment. But just from that, if I was looking at that without knowing what weird bladder symptoms are, my guess is it's obviously something that when someone says weird, that could be like it comes and goes. It feels my bladder feels irritated. It could be gleaning some
always with like these
assumptions.
certain circumstances
Yeah.
could be weird
Yeah.
too. Like,
So like I'm, pulling some assumptions here, but we need to be thinking with that about I'm like, okay, well, I'd want to know like what's that pelvic floor doing? Is there tension in there? Is that where the pain's coming from? Is this bloating something that has been new or been like your whole life? Are you constipated? These bladder symptoms, I'm wanting to know like what's your period been like? Is there maybe a history of endo in the family? Do we need to make sure you don't have endo? Because all those symptoms could be endo too. Like, is there PCOS? Like, all of those things we need to be investigating. And until you come in and you see one of us, again, it's like somebody that's trained to do more than just the musculoskeletal piece of pelvic health, then we can see. But obviously, we're going to start with once we do an assessment, we're really good at like being able to like prioritize like low hanging fruit of like the things that we know we can like address quickly and swiftly, and then we get back to the layers of everything else. So hopefully that's helpful. And then we're just gonna do one more question, and it is: I want to get pregnant in the next year. Should I be doing anything now to prepare my body from a pelvic health standpoint?
yeah.
Yes. We love it. Thinking about this question. We're glad that you're asking it. Definitely. Well, again, we don't know all the information here. Like, is this somebody who has like any endometriosis, PCOS? Is
Just any
this,
symptoms in
yeah, are there
general.
any symptoms in general? But if generally speaking, you're like a healthy individual and you're like, I want to get pregnant in the next year, should I do anything to prepare my body from a pelvic health standpoint? We do have people come in, they're like, okay, I want a pelvic floor assessment. I want to see what my pelvic floor is doing. I want some education on, like, for some people, they don't know how to track their cycles. They don't know, like, how do you optimize fertility with that? And so that's when we would go through and, like, teach you how to track your cycles. We'd be talking about general recommendations for supplements to help with egg quality and cycle support. We'd be talking about lifestyle changes as far as, like, are you sleeping enough? Do you do HIIT workouts? Or what kind of exercise are you doing? Nutrition. Based off what you tell us, we could refer to provide you with more support in some different areas. And that's going to help. The goal is at that point to optimize your system so that then you're more like you're going to be ready. And then also, like, if you're on birth control, we're going to be like, okay, well, let's start having a conversation of getting off birth control so that your body has time to get it off and regulate before you start to try.
Yeah. I think that just getting somebody in and we are going to be screening for any yellow or red flags, we'll call it, of just what would be something that would inhibit you maybe from getting pregnant, or when you're pregnant, what would we start to think, oh, we need to set you up for success so you don't have pain during pregnancy or you don't have unnecessary restriction during labor. Like if you have a really tight pelvic, or your pelvic floor is really high tone or things like that. Like just
Yeah.
think anything that if all of a sudden during pregnancy we're like, ooh, we need to try to take care of this so that you have a smooth labor, or we set you up for good postpartum, we can be doing that even before you're pregnant. And so it would be a big screen if you have no symptoms. It'd be just a big screen to say, okay, what are your goals? And do we
Yeah.
see anything that is potentially
Could be
could
something we need to
be
address.
inhibitory that we
Yeah.
could be optimizing, like Megan said. So yeah, that'd be just a big screen. And absolutely, yes, we love these people because what's cool is we see them and when they come back in, if there's nothing, if there's completely nothing wrong and we're just doing education, then at some point we see them coming back in because they're pregnant and
Yep.
then we're doing birth prep. And then we see
Yeah.
them afterwards and we help them get back to it. And then it's just this beautiful relationship then that we get to have and watch them have usually multiple babies, where then they're all of a
Yep.
sudden it's like, I'm pregnant again. And then, anyway,
Yep.
it's those are really fun patient relationships to have, to just be able to see them through their seasons of life. And
I know. I love it. So fun. So fun to see each step of the way. I can't tell you how many times I've seen somebody that they come in and they're pregnant and I'm seeing them pregnant. And then they tell me, well, I've just always had painful like we find out their pelvic floor is really tight. And they're like, well, I've always had pain with sex. Like that was before I got pregnant. And I'm like, okay. And they're like, I just decided it's probably like I needed to probably address this because I'm going to have the baby and I need to learn more about my pelvic floor, which is great because the pelvic floor it needs to lengthen and move out of the way. And we need to teach the different coordination of support, of activating pelvic floor and core. That's during. It's a completely different coordination when you're trying to allow labor to happen. And so we often are teaching one thing for 10 months, of like proper core activation, pelvic floor activation for support and all this stuff. And we're working on strengthening and everything. And then we go into that first push prep session and we start to cue that. And it's like, then you got to relearn how to actually let go of your abdomen and your pelvic floor and let that uterus push the baby out. It's cool to like see that progression happen.
don't believe the myth, I think, that your body's just going to know exactly what to do. Like I have so many moms come in afterwards who said, I had no idea what I was doing. They told me I had ineffective pushing, or like I was pushing and they said, you're not pushing. And just there's this tension and conflict and whatnot. So
Yeah.
just even, prepping, even when there's no symptoms, is so wise. And I haven't ever had a patient that thought that was out of line or unnecessary, or,
Oh,
that
yeah.
wasn't worth it. I have so many people though that come either very grateful for that prep or didn't do it, anything, and come in postpartum and say, I wish I would have known that I could have prepped, or I wish I would have taken that more. Like, I wish I would have done that, or whatever. So
Yeah.
there's so much prep work on the front end that we can do, even before pregnancy, but then also during pregnancy.
Because I would just say, I mean, yes. I mean, when people say that, it's like, okay, yes, your uterus is going to push the baby out. Like we know that is the physiological, that's what's going to happen. But the amount of people that I have seen who had said, like, they finally put two and two together where they had two different pregnancies. One, they did like a push prep and they learned how to actually let go of their pelvic floor and lengthen and work with the contraction of the uterus. And then the other one where all they worked on while they were pregnant was like activation, 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 contraction, like of their muscles of the pelvic floor and their core. And they had a much harder labor because now the uterus has to try to push baby out through muscles that are contracted
Trying
essentially.
to hold
So,
baby in.
yeah. So we have this like, reverse thing happening. And now there's other factors too. Like, let's be real. There's lots of different things that go into play anatomically of how your hips are built and all that kind of stuff and the outlet and all of that. Baby's position, how big baby is and all that. But generally speaking, when we're doing push prep stuff, honestly, the best way to do that is you have somebody assessing your pelvic floor while your simulation a bearing down so that we can give feedback and you can start to find that biofeedback feeling of, oh, yeah, that's me pushing down and bearing down. Women's faces light up when they're like, oh, That's it. I'm like, yes, now we found it. Now repeat it. Now go home, repeat that for the next 2 weeks. Okay, come back in. Let's try it again. And we tried in different positions on your back, on your side, on all fours, whatever you want to try, we're going to try it in. So,
There's nothing better than going into labor and delivery room confident and
yep,
just feeling like I'm ready for this. I don't know what's gonna happen, but I have some tools in my tool belt and let's
that's
go.
right. Okay, well, this was fun. That was 5 questions. Hopefully listening to those, if you know somebody or you yourself are like, "Oh yeah, I have that question too." Hopefully those were helpful. Just a little banter back and forth about these things we get asked pretty often. So,
And if you have more questions, send them to
yeah,
us. We'll do another
yeah,
one once we get a couple of questions that
do some
yeah.
more. We always save what we're given and then we'll address them. So, until next time, we'll continue this conversation. Thanks for listening, and we will talk to you soon. Thank you so much for joining us this week on the Pelvis Project podcast. Help us continue the conversation by liking and sharing this episode with friends. And if you really want to do us a solid, leave us a review. If you'd like to follow us on social, check out the show notes for links. And remember, this week, take a deep breath and relax your pelvic floor.